Hi, this is Richard Azerga from Microsoft, and this is the fourth of 5 patterns for connecting to SharePoint from an Office app. So in some of the previous scenarios, we've looked at things like an explicit login, we've looked at taking our Office app and embedding it inside of a SharePoint app, and we've looked at leveraging things like app-only permissions so that our Office app can easily connect into SharePoint. In this scenario, we're going to start to get a little bit more advanced and look at some patterns that are really good for multi-tenant apps. And so specifically, I call this fourth option permissions on the fly. So what we're going to do is have an app for SharePoint that's registered behind the scenes, either in the seller dashboard or using something like app-reg-new. It's not going to have any permissions to it. It's just going to be something that SharePoint knows about. It's going to be a known app. Then what we're going to do is on the fly, as the user decides they want to connect to a specific site, we can, on the fly, request that the user authorize the app for certain permissions on that site. So we call this permissions on the fly or permissions on demand. And there's a specific page inside of SharePoint that makes this possible. So in a layouts page, we have something called an OAuth authorize.aspx. And this is a special page that we can pass into it our app ID and the permissions that our app wants in order to go through that authorization process on the fly with a user. So they'll get a dialog that says that this app wants, whatever permission we're asking for, do you authorize or not? And if we take the happy path, what will happen is this page will return an authorization code that we can use to get a refresh token and an access token. And so that's really the magic of this, is we can use this OAuth authorized page to get access to SharePoint sites as we need. So everything is, again, on demand here, on the fly. Now, one of the things that's going to be interesting is that this OAuth authorized page is going to be launched as a separate window. Primarily because of the type of the amount of real estate it needs inside of a browser. It's not going to look good in something like a task pane. And there's really no great way of communicating from a pop-up back into our app because of the way apps are isolated. And so what we're going to need to do is we're going to pass a reference into this pop-up so that we can correlate it back to our app later on. And it's as simple as really passing in a unique identifier into our redirect URL. So if you look at what we're building here as our redirect URL, we're passing into it using the state parameter, a specific ID, and that's really our reference. So our app knows about this ID, and our page knows about this ID. And once we get a refresh token, we can store that refresh token based upon this reference ID. And that's really what brings this all together, even though we have the separated pop-up window from our app. So let's take a look at what this experience looks like of requesting permissions on the fly using our app for Office. So I'll go ahead and press play here. This is going to go launch our app for Office. And in this case, you're going to see that there's already some sites that are represented here, and that's as simple as I'm storing that user ID, that reference ID, as a token, a cookie, that I can easily go and just say, hey, does this user have a token, a cookie? If they do, go look at all the sites that they've connected to. So a cookie is what's making this possible. You can see a bunch of different sites here, but I can easily enter an additional site. If I wanted to go with one of the existing sites here, by selecting it, all I'm really doing is going and getting the refresh token out of a database for that site. And with that refresh token, I can get an access token, which gives me access to the data in that site. But let me show you what the experience is like of putting in an entirely new site in here. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in a new site. So I'll just go and select a site within my SharePoint tenant. And we'll do site / maybe team 4. I think I have a team 4. We'll go ahead and say go. That's going to go and launch our dialog. And here you can see that OAuth authorized dialog. And it's asking, hey, this app, this SP list reader app, wants to be able to create and delete document libraries for the site, and it wants basic information about the user. That's that authorization page that we're launching on the fly. This app at this point has no permissions to that site, and we're requesting those on the fly using that OAuth authorize page. And in this, we have an ID that ultimately references back to the user. And so that's what's going to allow us. You notice that the app says once you're done with the authorization dialog, press refresh. That's what's going to allow us to go and read the information that we've collected for this authorization process, which is a refresh token. So I'll go ahead and say trusted, and that's going to go through, and again, it's going to actually create a record in the database for this user's GUID, this reference ID that we have, and the refresh token. So you can see here it's saying you can go and close this dialog, and now when we refresh our page, you can see that it has our new site in here. It's actually added that new site because now that site has been authorized. At this point, I can select any of these sites. I can select the new one, or I can select one of these old ones that I've already selected in the past. It'll go and load all the list for that site. And I can select any of these lists to go and pull data for. So I might select a fleet list. It'll go out and read all the data for that list and populate our worksheet. At this point, I could go and maybe connect to a different list, or I connect to a completely different site if I wanted to. So if I wanted to now go out to the dev site, it'll show me all the list for that site, and I can go and maybe select a different list from that site. So this is, again, permissions on the fly. We're requesting permissions on the fly. All I have to do is behind the scenes have an app for SharePoint that's registered either through the seller dashboard or through appreg.new.aspx. This is a really nice pattern for multi-tenant apps, and it's something that's very popular. It's a popular pattern that's used for some apps that are in the marketplace today. So this is scenario 4 of 5 for connecting to SharePoint from an app for Office.